Hi everyone, BritSimon here. So let me address a question I'm getting frequently where I think people are a little bit confused about early submission of the DS260 and what positive impacts it can have to your case. So when we become DV lottery winners, one of the urges is to file the DS260 early. And some people seem to assume that even though they've got a very, very high case number, because they filed early, that is somehow going to give them an improvement in their chances so that later they will get interviewed before their number gets current or something like that, right? The reality is that's not true at all. You cannot be interviewed in the DV lottery process unless your number is eligible for an interview. And being eligible for an interview means your case number has to be below the number that is published in the visa bulletin for any given month. Now, there have been a tiny number of cases where the government screwed up and scheduled some interviews early for people. But we're talking a tiny number of cases, and those people were later held up while their number became current, right? So in general, let's say you're sitting there with a DV lottery case number of, let's say, EU 39,000, as I had a question this morning. And you've submitted your DS260 very early, and let's say it gets processed immediately. Let's say it were, somehow you get the fastest possible processing because you were one of the earliest people to submit your DS260. Does that mean you have a better chance of getting an interview? Well, no. If your case number never becomes current, then it will make no difference at all. You'll never be able to get an interview, right? But if your case number does get current, let me sort of describe two scenarios for that case number at EU 39,000 to try and sort of explain that, right? And I'm just picking on EU 39,000 and don't get fixated about EU 39,000. I'm just saying that is a case number that I already know to be very high in the case number ranges, because we're seeing EU numbers are generally going to be below 41,000. It looks like 41,000 is going to be about the highest case number based on the survey results that we have already. So 39,000, 39XXX or whatever, just under 40,000. We know that's going to be a very high case number. So you will wait all year while the visa bulletin moves up and up and up. But let's say by some miracle that case number does become current, let's say in the final month of the year. And let's imagine there's two case numbers at exactly that same number range, both in the 39,000 to 40,000 range, right? One of those cases filed early and was processed very early, right? They filed immediately, May 9th or whatever, May 6th. They filed immediately, and their case is processed very early. The other person with that same case number waits until December to file their DS260. But their cases both those cases won't become current until, let's say, July. Let's say they finally get current in the final visa bulletin for DV 2025, July of 2025, right? Not July of 2024, July of 25, right? So a year from now, over a year from now, right? So one of the cases files immediately, and the other case files their DS260 in December of this year, or January, or even February, or even March, right, of next year in 2025. Because that DS260 will be processed before July, as long as they file it by March, April, maybe even May. That's how late that person could file, right? If you think about how long it would take, because there's going to be no backlog at that time. So as soon as they submit their DS260, their DS260 will be processed. And if it's an EU case, very simple to process, someone with a boring job living his or her life in, I don't know, Germany or something, and has always lived there, right? No complicated travel history, nothing that would slow down the processing of the DS260 case, right? If they file, let's say they file as late as May, then that case will be processed prior to the visa bulletin that makes their case current, the final visa bulletin. Let's say they're becoming current in July, for a September interview. Remember, the July visa bulletin, or the visa bulletin that's published in July, concerns the final interviews for September of 25, right? So as long as those two cases are both processed before the July visa bulletin is published, then both of them are in the identical position. It doesn't make any difference at all that one filed early and the other filed very late. There is no advantage for either of those cases in that scenario, right? Literally none. And then the order in which they are given an interview for that month of September is based on their numerical order, on the case number, not to do with the day they file the case. And that happens because of a thing called AV status and the queues pertaining to AV status. And the rules for being ordered is at the point that the AV status queue is populated each month, and I have a video that explains this very well, but at the point that that AV queue is being filled up each month, the cases will only make it into the AV queue if they are processed. That's a yes/no question. Are they processed or are they not processed? And if they are processed, it doesn't matter how long they've been processed for and how long they've been waiting. And whether the case number is current. That's the only two things that matter. So were you processed in time and are you current, right? And then as you're being added to that AV queue, all of the cases that are being added to that AV queue are ordered in their numerical order according to the case number. So there is absolutely no advantage to a high case number who is filed very early versus a high case number who is filed very late. Absolutely no difference whatsoever. Okay, so that's the reality. And I'm hoping that that's clarifying things for some of the people here who think that there is some sort of race to file the DS260. Now, on the other hand, if you have a low case number and you file your DS260 late, then it could delay your interview because your case number would be current, but your DS260 is not processed yet. And so for some people with lower case numbers or even mid-range numbers, they should be filing their DS260 fairly early, right? But if you've got a high case number, there's no advantage to filing early. And in fact, there can be a disadvantage of filing because if your case number is so high that you never become current, then the filing of the DS260 declares immigration intent or intent desire on your part to emigrate to the USA. So if you never become current and therefore you never get the green card, right, then you may need to apply for non-immigrant visas in the future. And those non-immigrant visas may have to consider whether you have immigrant intent, whether you are trying to emigrate to America. And in that case, the fact that you filed a DS260, which is an application for an immigrant visa, that filing of that DS260, which was not useful to you at all because you never became current, that filing of the DS260 can make your non-immigrant visa application a little bit more difficult for some of the visa types, not all of them, but some of them, right? Now, it doesn't make it impossible to get a non-immigrant visa, but it can make it a little bit more difficult. You have to, in a non-immigrant visa, for some of the non-immigrant visas, you have to demonstrate that you will comply by the rules and that you will return home at the end of your visa validity period, if not before, and that you won't try and overstay, right? And so in that case, the fact that you have shown intention to try and emigrate to America previously could make the consular officer a little bit more concerned, a little bit more suspicious that maybe you'll try and stay in America beyond the terms of your visa, okay? And so that immigrant intent, which is how we term it, can cause some difficulties later for those future non-immigrant visa applications. So be a little bit careful, right? there's no advantage to filing quickly for a very high case number. And for some high case numbers, there could be a disadvantage. Okay, so if your case number is so high that you're never going to get current, then it's a sad fact that some of you should probably not even be filing your DS260 at all. Okay, now we will know more about case numbers in July and August of this year. We'll know more about case numbers because we'll actually know more about the number of selected people. So in that case, just hang on for a little bit and wait until after July or August to file your DS260. It will make no difference to your case in any way, because at least by then you'll know the numbers. And if you've got a high case number, you're going to have to wait for a long time anyway, right? So, so there you go. Try and not freak out about any of this. Don't start listening to people that don't know what the hell they're talking about. And just be a little bit sort of smart in the way that you're handling your own case. Okay. Okay. I think that's probably all I wanted to cover with you today. Again, let me just ask you one more time. Please do subscribe to my channel. Give me a thumbs up, by the way, if you like this video. It kind of helps the search algorithms for my channel if people are interacting with my videos. And so that's helpful. And subscribe to the channel, because that's going to help you get your green card if there's any way of getting you the green card. Okay, because good information in this process is very important. Okay. All right, everybody. Thank you for joining me. Thanks, and bye-bye.